Welcome everyone to our webinar, Gender Perspectives in Climate Reporting. Today we are honored to have Stella Paul with us. Stella is an accomplished environmental journalist based in India who is known for her insightful reporting on climate change and sustainability issues. Her work has been instrumental in raising awareness about environmental challenges and advocating for solutions. Currently, she manages the Clean Air Catalyst and Stop Spillover projects at the EJM, where she also mentors various global reporting initiatives. Please join me in welcoming Stella Paul. Stella, we are eager to hear your thoughts. I believe gender and climate change, it's not just theatrical, it's really deeply personal and affects all of us. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Alia. Thank you for the introduction. So, to add to what Alia said, as you know, Earth Journalism Network is a media development organization, which means it works to help journalists, better their reporting or help journalists to expand their own reporting and that's impact. That means it provides journalists all the support that it can afford to provide. But there's another introduction to EJN, and which is like, everybody at EJN is a former or current journalist, including the founder of EJN, James Funn. He himself is a journalist. So we are all journalists. We are also project managers. And many of us are actually, we are freelance journalists. And this is the reason why we are also doing a job, because that will come up in my slides also later on, that, freelance journalism, unless you are married to a very wealthy person, that's my personal take on it, or you were born with a silver spoon, it's very, very difficult to survive just by doing freelance journalism. And hence we do different kind of works, also we can't just afford to cover one bit. We cover different bits because we can't afford to stay on one story. So yeah, I'm also a journalist, a working journalist, and previously I used to report for some European and international media outlets, but currently I only report for Interpress Service, which is a news agency. Many of you may have also reported for it, including Alia, I know. So that's my introduction, but I also have a personal introduction to share with you, and which is like, I come from the Northeast India, and I'm a climate refugee. And my story is also there at TJN, very briefly, until I was, a teenager, our home used to be flooded every single year. And we only have electricity in our house when I was in class 8. I grew up living in a kacha house, which is like a mud hut. So the mud hut would come down, get this completely destroyed every time because they can't withstand water. So more than 5 or 6 hours of waterlogging, and the whole foundation would be collapsing. So that's the reality I grew up with. Okay, that means we would be shifting to looking, somewhere else, looking for drier ground, and sometimes some neighbors of us who had a higher built their houses on a higher ground, they would be giving us shelter. Otherwise we would be staying in the local primary school, and this was an annual thing. So I come from there, okay? And this is what, as Alia said, the climate change is not just a story, it's our story. I think it's a shared reality that many of us, we have here. So I'm a bit passionate, as you can imagine, because every time I talk about climate journalism or gender journalism, for me, it's like, it's telling my own story, that story of my mother, my aunt, my sisters, like the people I grew up with. Okay, so with that introduction, I have put together a few slides because maybe I thought maybe in after this session is over, you would like to go back there, because I have also put together a list of resources. So maybe you would like to look at some of those links, and maybe they can be helpful to you. So I'm just putting 5 points here for you. And again, as we got introduced ourselves, I can see that it's a very group of diverse diverse group of experiences. Some of us have been here for many years. Some of us have, almost all of us are traveling, or we travel wherever the story takes us. And I think many of you also are covering not just the climate change, but human rights and other things. I don't personally, I think just to say that I'm a climate change journalist kind of smells of privilege to me. Being a freelancer based in South Asia means that we have, we don't have those privileges where we can just keep reporting about climate change, especially a topic that is still in its infancy, you know, and we have to survive. That means we even if we don't, even if we get a lot of fellowships opportunities, they don't last forever. So what I believe, I don't call myself a climate journalist. I call myself as an environmental journalist because that's who I am. So this is why I'm also going to talk to you about environmental stories in general, not just climate change. Okay. So first, it's like a mini agenda. I can see like the 5 points that I'm going to talk about include, great environmental story versus great gender story, and then bonding before reporting, finding the missing voices, expanding your audience base, and the last one, probably the most important one at times for us freelancers. How do we read the mind of the selectors and the judges, who are judging different opportunities? So what are funders looking for? Again, none of this may be completely unheard to you. You all have heard this before. If you look at these lines, it sounds familiar. So what I will try to share with you is something that may still feel kind of new or not, often talked about. Okay. So first one, I said great environmental story versus great gender story. So let me move this on this side. Okay. So I think a great environmental story is a great gender story. And we can remove this versus, because sometimes I feel like we are putting in too many silos, and branding journalists accordingly. This one is a climate journalist, that one is a gender journalist, and it seems like the climate journalist is more important, and the gender journalist is kind of a lesser journalist, like as though a gender journalist is just going to a flower show and covering it, and the climate journalist is traveling, putting in great effort to go to a disaster site and doing a story. So I see like lack of democracy, or some sort of, again, I would say that, some privileged thought go into this kind of labeling, like, okay, the environmental story and gender journalism, those are two different entities or issues altogether, but they're not. They're not, simply because gender imbalance is an error, not an ideal, not a model we should follow. So when we say a great environmental story, it does mean that there is a balance, proper balance of gender representation. That if you are interviewing 6 people for my story or multiple sources, at least 50% of that is, like men, and 50% of that is women. Or, we are bringing in different gender perspectives into the story. And if we are missing that balance, and then we are calling ourselves, like great environmental, journalists, I think it doesn't work. So this is why, as a freelancer, especially, I think these brandings, they cause us more harm than cause us good. And I would always want us all to remember that a great environmental story is a story that also has a perfect gender balance in the representation of voices, in the representation of perspectives, in the representation of issues, and things like that. Okay. And next, it's okay to take a gender transformative approach. Now, having said that, a gender imbalance, or we should do a perfectly balanced, gender balanced story, we see that 99.9% of us end up focusing on women and focusing on children when we are doing a story, because we also feel like, they're they're voiceless, and many of us say that, we want to be the voice of the voiceless, right? That's a very common slogan, and that's a psyche, that's our thinking, that's a thought we carry in our heart and in our mind. And I think that's okay. That's okay because, if you talk to any gender specialist, you will see that there is an idea of gender equity, where you put them on a same, similar, equal platform. But then there is also something called gender transformation. So that means, like, let's imagine 2 people standing and trying to look at, through the window, okay, and trying to look at what is going on outside the window. So one thing is that you give them a stool to each one so that both of them can stand up on the stool and look outside of the window. So the size of the stool is the same, and you are giving it to both of them, and that is called gender equality. But then there is one person who is 6 feet tall, and there is one person who is 4 feet tall. So here, the law of gender equality doesn't work, right? Because the shorter person will still stay well below the window and cannot have the same view that the other person will have. And that's why the idea is to give the person a tool which is slightly taller, so that these 2 people can now be exactly at the same level. And that's the gender transformative approach. And as journalists, if we are focusing more on women when we go out to tell a climate change story, let's say earthquake or a landslide that has happened, or mudslide, and we are talking to more women, that's totally okay. We should not feel guilty about it, because we know that, 90 out of 100 times, the women are more likely to not, to be more affected than the men. So it's totally fine. Don't feel like we are acting as activists. Okay, we are just trying to be practical here and taking a gender transformative approach, and then understand the gender stereotypes and break those. So here, I think it's very region specific, culture specific. What are the gender stereotypes? For example, I see that many of us think like, or I usually see many journalists, when they are covering a climate story or an environmental story, they start with a woman's story, which is great, but then most of the times they find a woman who has been a victim. Now, if you look at the ratio of women being presented as warriors, or women being presented as leaders, as solution providers, and then women being presented as victims, the victim stories are like up here, and the stories of women as solution providers are here. And this is kind of a gender stereotype. Yes, women are disproportionately affected, but But there are also a lot of women who are coming up with solutions. They may not all be at the community level, but look at the bureaucracy, look at the ministry, look at the academia. There are women who are, doing as much great work as their male colleagues. It's just that we are not putting enough effort to find them. So this is why I think, the story appears, it presents certain image of women in our region where they are, like the majority of them come to us as victims. I think this is a stereotype, and we can find many such stereotypes in our own region, and I think we can try to break this. Um, the the photo that I chose here is from Myanmar, where I did a story on mangroves. And this is a group, and when I was doing this story, I saw that the number of women and men who are trying to regenerate this mangrove forest, which was completely destroyed by the tsunami, Asian tsunami 10, 15 years ago in 2004, actually, so 20 years ago. Uh, the same, they're putting in the same kind of effort. And yet, when I landed there to do this story, it was the man who was coming up. Our typical trouble. Men are coming, and women are feeling shy, sitting at the back. When I wanted to take some photos, it was always the men, men, men. So I just thought that, how can I make, a representational image of equal contribution being done by, or both of the, both men and women providing the same solution, and hence this photo. Um, the next one is, I'm pretty sure everybody does it because, women journalists are way more sensitive than men journalists. So this does not need to be said. It's not a new concept. I'm just trying to reassert it here that, knowing the human is essential for a human-centric story. And that's why I think as freelancers, we do have our own weaknesses, but we also have some of our own strength. And one strength is that it takes us longer to produce a story because we have to mobilize resources, finance, etc., etc., and it takes longer. But that also means that if we want, we can actually spend some time extra on the field. And I would definitely suggest that when we are going to tell a story, we should spend some additional time. It's not like, hit and run strategy where we go, we do a story, and then we come back, quickly. It doesn't work for freelancers, especially. We need to put our heart and soul in each story, thinking that we are only as good as our last story, So this means we spend more time to getting to know people first, build a trust with them. And I would say never hesitate to bond with the interviewee before you interview them. Many people say that, like your bias will come in, you will have a personal conflict. I would say that it's not like I'm interviewing my own mother for my story, right? I'm interviewing somebody's mother. And if I don't know her, then how am I going to tell her story? And trust building is key to a great gender story because people, especially women or children, they or men from marginalized sexual minority groups, they take more time. They're not seen as heroes normally, they're seen as disruptors, or they're seen as negative forces sometimes, or weaker group of people. So they're not used to be totally telling their stories, with confidence. That's why we need to give them more time and make them believe that we believe in their story. It has value for us. That takes time. And you can be objective and still sensitive to the local culture and values. And here I want to give an example. So this photo, you see the hand that I'm holding of, she's a sex worker. And this is one of my first stories of my life, where I did a story on women from farming families being pushed into sex trafficking. Okay, so this woman was the wife of a farmer who committed suicide due to climate change, drought, death. And then she came to Hyderabad and she was pushed into commercial sex. And when I went to do this story, like they were sitting on the ground and it was time for them to have lunch. And they had their dabbas, with them, small lunch boxes. And they were feeling shy to ask me to sit down, but then I sat down on my own and then, like I took some active interest in what they're eating, who cooked the lunch for them. And then it took them a long time, but ultimately they offered me, like, will you have something? Now, let's say this food is not exactly what maybe according to my taste, okay? But here the food is not food, okay? It's like a medium for us to bond, right? And this is our Indian culture or our South Asian regional culture. If somebody offers you tea, it's not courtesy, it's more than that. It's like their warmth, it's like their trust coming forth. I would say that it's an opportunity we should grab, and we don't need to subscribe to the values of other regions here, and we should go by what our culture and local values teach us. So this is your opportunity to if you respect their values, they will open up, trust is built. The next one is, missing voices and missing perspectives. This is again nothing new here. You have heard it multiple times. What's new is that uh, in environmental reporting, you will see that the voices of the marginalized is still in short supply. You will maybe because we are still not doing enough environmental reporting. We are looking at certain areas, climate change. We are looking at sanitation. We are looking at water. Yeah, but then there are so many other aspects of environmental journalism. So if you go into these different areas of reporting, then you will see that there are very few women who are being interviewed. Women experts, for example, are hardly ever interviewed. The whole story is there. It's a great story, but from top to bottom, all the experts are just men, 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 So environmental reporting still has a lot of missing voices. And now, if we talk about marginalized, I just want to give some examples. So in Asian context, Mahadalit, okay, we say Dalit, 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 but even the Dalit community has a hierarchy. Like there are upper class Dalits, and then there are, lower class Dalits, the Mahadalits, okay, like the Chamar, so there are Bangi, there are so many other communities. Decriminalized tribes. We think about indigenous people, tribal people, immediately we are imagining a forest and people living in the forest. There are tribal people living right in the vicinity of a city. They were criminalized once, now they are not criminalized. They are called notified tribes. They live in terrible conditions. Where are the stories? Do we ever go and tell the stories of the issues they face regarding sanitation or water or renewable energy and things like that? So nomadic pastoralists, let's say Gujar, how many stories of the Gujars do you see actually in the mainstream media? Like climate action refugees. Now you see what I mean by climate action refugees is, let's say there's a hydropower dam coming up. We do a lot of stories of people not getting their land or people being evicted, but then we don't go further. Or we do usually do a story before they get the notice and not getting the correct market price, but we don't really look at the environmental issues that these people are facing as a result of this climate action. For example, the water issues that they face, the energy issues that they face, the climate issues that they face in their new settlement. and climate migrants. We still with there is one popular trend to do show like how girls marriage, minor girls are being married off because of climate change. That's a very popular story. But we hardly do stories of people who have left, let's say, Bangladesh and come to India, or people who have moved from one country to another and what are the issues they are facing now. Escaping one disaster and jumping into another. Those stories are not, said. And so this is why I say follow-up stories are a great way to find missing voices. So let's say we do a story, there's a disaster that happens, and then we go and report it, that's great. But then after a year, if we can go back to the same community, we will find a different set of realities and a different set of stories. And that's where the hard-hitting gender stories are waiting for us. Like what happened to the children after the disaster? What happened to the women after the disaster? What kind of problems did they face? So I will say that, we should, as freelancers, we should keep an open eye, actively look out for these missing voices and missing perspectives. Then expanding the audience base through environmental journalism. This is, I think, as freelancers, this is our constant struggle, right? We don't have the backing of, many of us report for international media outlets, right? It's great to say that we got byline in this, the Times Magazine, we got byline in Guardian and all. But we know our relationship with them is only like, we get paid per story. And no matter how many stories you have written for them, nothing is guaranteed. There is no guarantee that tomorrow you request for a letter of endorsement, or like their support for us, it cannot be taken for granted, right? So hence it comes to us to build our own audience base as individual journalists, because only then we can present this as a strength to the particular media outlet, saying that these are the people who follow me, and I was told a story that there was this journalist and they fell out, okay, over whatever the issue. And she was threatening to quit. And the media outlet was so scared to let her go because she has nearly 100,000 followers, okay, and wherever she will go, she will take those followers with her, right? When we are part of a media outlet, it's the brand that people follow, but as freelancers we are our own brands. Should seriously be putting in some thoughts into how can we grow our own personal audience base. So first one, if you see, conference event reporting is a great way to find new audience. So I think it's great that we are doing ground stories, rural reporting, etc. That's where our heart and souls are. But then as a strategy, we should always also try to report from some events, okay? Because what happens is that when there is a conference, there is a ready audience. People are already there. They're waiting for take the COP, for example, okay? There is the audience. You don't have to grow the audience. You just have to grab a chunk of it, So people are already looking for, they are ready to get the news from the COP, and you just do the story. So it doesn't have to be everything we do, but it definitely should be something we should do, because this is a great way to cultivate, grow your audience. Second, consistently interviewing of gender experts helps. So you will see, you probably have to subscribe to different newsletters of different organizations. You will see whenever they publish some report or something, from time to time, they will come to you and say like, these experts are available. Would you like to? I would say that, whenever possible, or if you are in an event, you can interview as many experts as possible. It's okay if you don't do a separate story on that, or it's okay if you use them just one part of your story. But knowing this, registering itself yourself as a gender reporter, okay, climate environmental gender reporter, you will get yourself noticed. Next time they will come and request you to, or invite you to this event, that event. The third one is, embrace social media, but be, sorry, I missed one word here, but be attentive to what works. So there's the social media is such a huge, it's like a monster, okay? But not everything works for everybody. I mean, personally, I feel it's so stressful. If I have to just keep focusing on social media all day long, then I won't have time for eating or cooking or doing anything. And then no, I also say that every social media platform has its own character. For me, Instagram is not my place, because I see when I put a beautiful photo, I get a lot of likes. When I put a story, nobody reads it, okay? On Facebook, it's like 50-50, but then I use Twitter as the place to showcase my work. I think people there see me more as a journalist. Now, it doesn't have to be how I feel. You try, okay? Try different platforms, but you should have an account and you should post something. If you cannot post everything every day, post something on a fixed day in a week, and then see what works. Where are you getting noticed, okay? Where are people responding to your work? Not to you, beautiful eyes and beautiful dress, yeah, बहुत अच्छे लग रहे हो, बहुत सुंदर हो, अच्छा लगता है सुनना, है ना? पर बात तो मेरी स्टोरी की है ना, पढ़ा है क्या किसी ने? So I would say that, check it out and then stick to where people are more serious. See you as a journalist, not as just as a friend. Next, submit your gender stories for award applications. Now, it is a hard pill when we get rejected. I mean, I can tell you that I have lost count of how many rejections I have, and I still get in my inbox every time I apply for something. And of late, what I do is that the moment I see but, I delete. Okay, thank you for applying, but we have this set language, so delete it immediately, don't let it affect you, but keep applying. You know why? Because this is a strategy to get yourself noticed, to get your story noticed. Because if you are applying for something, believe me, now that I'm at EJN and judging is one thing I do every single week, I know that as judges, we are bound to read through every single story. So somebody is reading your story, whether they select that as the best story or not, whether they select you for the award or not, your story is being read. Okay, and that is important. So that's there you have an audience there, and this is why you should keep applying for opportunities. Next, expanding the audience base through environment. Have I not conference? I think I have okay, I'll go to the next one. Yeah, I think the two slides, I may have repeated the two slides, okay? So this one, finally, what do selectors and judges want? So I just talked about applying for the awards, and now I'm moving into this area. So as I said, I joined EJN in 2021, and it's almost 4 years. And in these 4 years, I may have personally judged more than 400 applications, both of journalists and applications of media outlets for different opportunities, okay? And I'm also in the jury committee of IWMF and One World Media and so on. So from my collective experience, I just thought of sharing these few tips, insight, some insight with you. First, consistency. Journalists who cover gender more often are more likely to be selected than the one with a single great story sample. So sometimes we see, we like I said, judging has so many yardsticks, and there are so many factors to be considered, and one of them is like the seriousness of the journalist to the particular issue and their experiences. So let's say we get 2 story samples for a certain grant from a certain applicant, and one of them is a great gender story, but then we go to their profile, and we see that they almost never cover gender. Okay, then we know that probably this is one story they did, and they thought that this particular opportunity is about gender, so they just submitted it. So, and then we find someone else who may not have submitted the best story, but when we go to their profile, we see that they have that consistently covering gender stories. So we will always go with the other person. Okay, so this is something for you to know, that consistency pays. It may not pay for one award, because awards and opportunities have so many other factors, including the conditions from the set by the funder, but it will click somewhere or else. Okay, next, impact potential. Now this works across opportunities. Does this story have a chance of changing anything? Think of concrete action it could start. And this is why I think we need to be super, super clear. Like, let's say we are reporting about an environmental issue. We are reporting about climate change. Now, come on. If you say that what will change, and if you are selected for the interview and people, they will say, what kind of changes do you think it will create? How can you say that what will change? I mean, do you think that climate change will stop overnight? And things will change? No. So that's why we need to give our story tell our story from that particular angle, where we do see that there is a room for concrete action. So it can be climate change, it can be renewable energy, it can be just transition, it can be anything, okay, biodiversity, for deforestation, but it's good to spend some time on planning the story. Like, what is our core message that is going to be, that can make people stop and engage and try to do something? So I think that bit is very important to consider, because if we can think about a particular thing that will be changed if my story is read by a lot of people, then that means I have created some impact potential in my story. And that means that that story is more likely to be chosen by the funders, because even the funders need to report to their funders. And if an impact happens, the funders will say that our funding has helped create this impact, right? So do give it a good thought while you are planning a story, okay? The next one, use of diverse reporting tools to capture the gender perspectives. Now, I really love to hear Saher, and I think Basira also, when you were talking about, like, I do multimedia work, because multimedia doesn't mean that we will hold those very high-end cameras that cost 5 lakhs or 10 lakhs. No, with our own, like our multimedia is basically our phone, right? That is everything. So when we are going to the field, we freelancers, we can't afford to hire a photographer. So we are one person. Most of the time we are one person newsrooms, right? News production, and that's good for us, because we can keep practicing our photography, we can keep practicing our own audio. So when you do a story, all I'm saying is that make record it completely on the story. So make an audio recording, make a video recording, take good photographs, and of course then followed by the text. And then if you don't know how to do data journalism, no problem. You can at least use Google Map. That's the least you can do. So try to put in as many, use as many tools as possible. Maybe, people will see the effort you have made. It will help expand your audiences because some people may listen to the radio story podcast, some people may, and when you are applying, for something, you can say, I do XYZ, not just the multimedia, but I do. And then you are actually showing your examples. So many a times it's not like we can't do it, it's that we don't take it seriously enough. But believe me, for freelancers, I think multimedia journalism is not a luxury, it's essential. It's an essential tool to get ourselves noticed. Okay. And finally, and use of diverse reporting tools, I said. And then finally, unique but executable ideas. Now, many a times we see, and now I'm talking as a selector, as a judge, okay? We receive a lot of applications that have very fantastic story ideas. But when we break it down, we see that, it sounds good, but it's not possible to be executed. Like you come up with a very sensational story idea, but it's not practical to capture it because your odds, your risks are too many. So I would say that, and you also are not clear who exactly to interview. You are not clear which experts are, if there are any experts to speak on this particular subject. So for practical reasons, then it won't work. So I'll say that it's great while we freelancers need to be 2 steps ahead of employee journalists, because the only way the media outlets will commission us a story is because we can do something that their journalists cannot do. We can either tell it in a better way, or we can tell a story that only we have access to, right? A story that is difficult or unique. So let's try to sharpen this unique strength of ours, and let's try to also think, okay, this sounds like a great idea, but then is it possible for me to really do it? And if yes, how can I overcome? It's like identifying the obstacles beforehand and then coming up with your plan B. How am I going to address this particular obstacle and still deliver this story? So it's a bit of a strategy, but I think freelancing and strategizing go hand in hand. Um, and now here are some resources that I have put together. So very first one, these are all resources from EJN. And at the last one, you can see the more resources. If you go to this particular link, you can find all of these resources. The next one is, find free footage. I think this is, EJN has actually invested into it. And this is like a database. So you can actually free resource, you can go and you can use any of this video footage that has been put together by Sanchez and Menon. And the third one is practical ways of environmental journalists to leverage generative AI. Now, this focuses on Southeast Asia, but AI is now, it's like God, okay, it's all over. So I think you can adapt and you can use it, even for yourself. The next one, this is a database I have just created myself, and it's a very new resource. It's about, experts database. So one problem we freelancers also have is finding experts, especially on new topics, right? And One Health is an emerging topic since COVID. It has become really, become one of the trending topics that is basically like connects human and animals and planetary health all together. But where are the experts? And if I don't say I'm from the Hindu or I'm from the Indian Express, sometimes even experts, they are not interested in giving me an example Okay, so where do I find the correct expert and how do I know who covers what? So this is a database where you can go and see the experts, and their area of expertise is also mentioned. So depending on what story you are doing, it doesn't have to be on one health story. Okay, maybe you are doing a story on sustainability. You can go and find an expert right here and interview him or her. Okay. Next, covering climate finance for coastal resilience, a guide for journalists. Now, although this again it says coastal resilience, that doesn't mean that journalists living in the mountain area cannot look through it. This will be useful for them as well, basically because it's about how to cover climate finance stories. Yeah. This next one, database of women experts. This is also an evolving document, just like the One Health experts. You can find women experts living in not in just in South Asia, but also in different parts of Asia Pacific. So wherever you are traveling tomorrow and you want to do a story there and you want to talk to an expert, you can just go to this database and interview someone. Okay, connect with someone. These are the resources. I think that's the last slide I had. And now I don't know how much time I have left for everyone, but I'm okay to stay on because we started a bit late. So if everybody's okay,
Yeah, please.
we can have a Q&A. Yeah. So maybe we can have about 10 minutes yeah. Thank you. And these are my details. So yeah, please do connect with me whenever you can. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Stella, for this insightful session. I mean, I feel so great, and after this session, I mean, I wanted to keep note of everything. It's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, anybody has any question or any statement, any thoughts to share?
I'm Shanika from Sri Lanka. I think you can hear me, right?
Yes, Shanika.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I joined a few minutes later. Sorry for that. But rest of the uh, of your explanation is very effective for us. And I have one question about how freelancers make the transport requirements happen, because sometimes in Sri Lanka, because of the economical constraints in among the publishing houses, the transport is very much difficult to get transport costs. So how do you suggest people to get the transport cost and other facilities for freelancers?
Yeah, Shanika, so you were not here when we were introducing ourselves. So I
Yeah,
am
I'm very
now, yeah,
sorry.
no problem, no problem. So I am now, I work for Earth Journalism Network, but I'm also a full-time freelance journalist, okay? So I
Yeah,
can only share my tip based on my experience or the how I make it work for myself, okay?
yeah, yeah,
So what I do is when I am planning a story, I also, I mean, or I'm planning a trip, okay, for a story. I spend some time on it and I try to see how many stories can I come back with from a single trip. And let's say I try to see that I'm back at least with 3 stories. Maybe I have got order for just one story, commission for just one story, and that's the story I will submit to a particular media house. But then I will come back when I'm there. I will try to find 2 other story ideas and develop them and take as many photos as possible. That's why I said make as many recordings as possible. I can use all this content later to develop the 2 other stories, and then I will pitch those 2 stories to the editor of the same media outlet or different media outlets. And what I see is like, so okay, so my total cost will be let's say 20,000, okay, or 15,000
Yeah.
rupiah, and then I will sell one story right now, and I will probably get back 10. Okay, so that's like 80% or 75% of my cost is recovered. But then if I sell two other stories, which I will find while I'm on the trip, I will make another 10 plus 10, let's say another 20. And so it will kind of cover my total cost. That's the only way that works for me. Unless, of course, I'm traveling on a fellowship, I'm traveling on a grant where my costs are already reimbursed by the organization. But on a given day, I think this is the only smart way for me to think, go ahead and plan it that way. Okay, Evelyn has her hands up.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're
Got the
welcome.
Yeah,
point.
thank you so much. Thank you for the splendid presentation. A lot to learn. So I have a question, and that question is, I want to know, as a freelance person, sometimes it differs from where you are, depending. So when you do maybe out of one proposal, you go in the field, you maybe have two, three more other stories you'll be working on. Do you pitch it to the same institution, or you look out for other institutions that you do pitch those other stories to? And how does it work? Is it
Okay.
always sometimes you are successful?
Yeah. So one thing I did not include in my slide is that you spend as much time as possible on building a relationship with your editor. Now, for example, I have reported just, regularly for 3 media outlets. At one point, I was reporting for all 3 of them. And I had excellent relationship with all the 3 editors, okay? And now how that pays you. Now, for example, I only report for one media outlet, okay? But the relationship that I have with my editor is so good that I actually don't, although I'm a freelancer, but I don't have to pitch. It's the editor who calls me and who commissions me the story. So this is how far you can go with your relationship building, okay? So that's one. The second one, I will still say that as a strategy, never stay stuck on one media outlet because editors change their jobs, right? Media outlets change their policies. Media outlets break up. All kind of changes are constantly happening in the media sector. To politics changes, one election can change everything, okay? So I will say if you're serious about surviving as a freelancer, try to report for 2-3 outlets and build relationships with all your editors, because then one editor may only be publishing on climate change, but the other one may be serious about non-climate environmental stories, and you have a fantastic non-climate environmental story. So where do you take it? That's why you need a different second outlet. And when you come back with those multiple story ideas, you pitch them separately to different media outlets. If you see that a particular media outlet is not responding, then you tell them, I'm not hearing back from you, and then take it to someone else and pitch it to them. Because it's about survival. We can't have the luxury of just working with one person and being too dependent on them, right? So I would say that 3 media outlets is a good number to work with at the same time, because it increases your chances of telling more stories. It's not just about making more money, it's also about telling more stories and then increasing your portfolio as a diverse reporting portfolio. Yeah.
Yashri, do you want
Okay.
to
Thank
say?
you so much.
Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you.
You're
Hi,
welcome.
hi. I'm just going to go with my question next. I have to leave a little early. But Stella, thank you so much for the session. Alias, thank you so much for organizing this. Stella, thank you for your points. And I think my observation immediately was, and a question that also comes to my mind is that do you often see gaps in research on gender-based stories and the impact of climate change on women? Because I have tried to pitch a number of stories myself, but sometimes while researching it, I see research-based gaps on the lives of women, affecting their health, mental health, gynecological health, everything. And you often, like, there in the news cycle, yes, there are certain gender-based stories on climate in the Indian context reported, such as what's happening with the sugarcane farmers in Beed, Maharashtra, or the women of Sundarbans in West Bengal. Um, but it's the same story that's been out there already. So in order to find new stories, when I look at a different geographical region, I see that there is a research gap also.
Mhm.
And how do you tackle with such a dilemma is my question, because the Sundarban story has already been covered so many times from different angles, but how do you navigate this dilemma of wanting to cover something new but also seeing the lack of research and facts there?
Yeah. So do you remember that I think it was in my second or third slide, I said that do try to also cover conferences
Yeah.
and events. Yeah. And that's a great place to bridge this gap, okay, of research gap. And also a great place to catch to get a story idea that is yet to be out in the market, because these are places where academia, the researchers, people who have just completed a study and they are going to come and release this report, share the findings. Okay, so this cannot be the story, all the whole story, but you are getting the seeds of an idea, and the idea is not out there yet. So I will say that's a quick way for us freelancers to address this issue. Try to attend whatever events are happening, whatever conferences, environmental conferences happening in town. And the great thing is that you will see many of these conferences have totally free entry. You don't have to pay to get registered, and as media people you can just walk in and you will probably see yourself sometimes as the only journalist in the whole room, and that's a privilege. You will directly talk to the researchers, the head scientist, even the organization. And if you can do this story, develop this story while going back, so you can now go to the sugarcane farmers in the Beed who sold their uterus. You will see that story is out there, but maybe this time you have an information piece of information that is related to what other health issues they are facing, or how else they are coming to go, how are they going to overcome the trauma. So some or other story idea you will find in the conference, and then you can take it back to the field and come back with a story that is totally unique. And when somebody from the media outlet asks, so what's new, then you can confidently say, okay, this is what is new, and I have access to that. I also have spoken to the scientist who led this research, and I have everything that nobody else has. That's, for me, is a good way to address this issue. Okay, the last person with her hands up is Anita.
Yeah.
Hello, how are you? Thank you so much. And I'm really sorry to lose first of all because I joined a little late. I'm sorry, but I'm from Iran, and from beginning of 2023, I joined to the international community Oroville. And totally my background in Iran, just focus on the writing. I was writer in some magazine which is related to art, culture, anthropology, women study, and kids. And I know about my skills in Persian language, okay, but also in India, in at least from last 6 months until now, when I share my article with everybody, they were really surprised. Oh wow, nice, great, but I can't find any opportunity for writing.
Yes.
And I'm really surprised because last week I sent an article about the boycotting which is happening in this communication, and they use my article. Okay, as an anonymous, I'm okay. I'm just trying to, share my view with the people. It's not important for me to put my name or not, because in Iran also last 2 years before until now I'm just work as anonymous for women. But I can't find a position for writing really, and I don't know how I can start to research about the which magazine can help. And I'm like foreign, and this market is really and I don't know how I can start to find an opportunity for writing. And now I'm just writing my book also. I mean, my stories, which is a start from Baluchistan, because I was born and raised in Baluchistan, part of Iran.
Thank you,
And Auntie
Anita.
Pondicherry.
Thank you
You
so
know?
much. We are a little short of time, so can you quickly
Yeah.
respond to her query, Stella?
Yeah, I can. And I will say that one thing I can ask you, maybe Anita, is that go to Earth Journalism Network website, and we have just given a call, or it's going to be published very soon, that we will ask very soon. We will announce a new story grant. And I think 2 new story grants are coming up. And Anita, one thing you can do is, when you find very difficult to get an opportunity in a particular media house or anywhere, collaborative story ideas can work very well. So what you can do is you can pitch a story where you will be teaming up with another journalist from another country. And this is difficult for any media outlet to afford. They cannot afford, and everybody loves a collaborative story. So maybe you can talk to somebody from this collective, and you can come up with a collaborative story idea, and then you can pitch a collaborative story idea to the media houses, and then also look through EJN story grants, and then you can actually apply with such a collaborative story idea, or just a story idea based in Iran, because maybe for Iranian media, doing stories from Iran is nothing new, but there are very few Western countries that have correspondents in Iran, and editors will love to get a perspective or a journalist from Iran adding to or working on an international story. So do have an eye on art
Thank you so much.
journalism.
Is it possible to tell me the website which you first mentioned about that, the name?
Yeah, so you can even Google. It's artjournalismnetwork.org. I will just write the name of our organization, and you can Google Journalism Network. Okay. Yeah. This. Okay. So the website is earthjournalismnetwork.org. I think I also have to leave. So maybe just the last question from Sarah, and then
Sahar,
we
if you
can
can
wrap it up.
quickly ask
Yeah,
questions.
just a small bit. Thank you so much for this
Yeah.
wonderful session, and thank you so much, Alia, for organizing this. It was really helpful for me, at least, and I think for all of us. So basically, I just want to ask a very, this is the question is that I want to report things on climate change, and I started this year where I came across some stories. But there was this thing, I was a bit reluctant. I did my research part, I spoke to people, and then I left it. I don't know. I was just, I was a bit reluctant whether I should do it, whether I should not do it. So can you just give me like just in 2 3 lines, like how to continue with it, or how to attempt climate change stories? What should I start with, or how should I do these stories?
Okay. So first of all, I think you need to understand why climate change stories. You should do climate change stories. We are freelancers, okay? And I'll be as blunt as possible, because I don't know your financial background or conditions there, but I will, I'm a journalist who completely survives on journalism. So for me, it's not just about my passion, it's also about my survival. And I need to do the stories that I can do, I'm capable of doing, but I also need to tell the stories that have a market, that will be read, that have an interested audience. And climate change has a ready-made market. Climate change has an interested audience because the survival of this planet depending on climate change and what action is being taken to stop it, right? So every year, millions and millions of dollars by all the countries put together are being put into fighting climate change. And at least 20 to 30% of that money is for climate communications. Okay. Now, can you imagine how much money is there out in the world to support climate change communication? And what is climate change communication? It's not newsletters, okay, or brochures, it's stories. So that means as we speak right now, I think in the 196 countries, at least even if there is $1 million in 50% of these countries, we are looking at 50 to 60 million dollars that is being spent each year on climate change, supporting climate change journalism. Okay, so that's why there are all the media outlets that are dedicatedly covering climate change, different levels. Some are doing it more, some are doing it less. But yes, if you look at when the COP happens, the day that the climate change COP starts, that is the headline. It's an environmental story, but it is the main headline of all the media outlets across the world, right? That is how much interest is there in the world. And being interest means there is funding. Funding means that there will be media outlets who will be doing this story. As freelancers, this is our opportunity. And you being in Kashmir, where the most of you go out of India or Asia and ask people what do they know about Kashmir, and they, oh yeah, there is military. And oh yeah, there is conflict, right? That is the image of Kashmir, right? They don't know that people in the Kashmir, they suffer from bullets, but they also suffer from flooding. They also suffer from landslides. So who will tell these stories? Who will tell this truth? It is up to us, right? And that is your advantage, that there is less competition. That is your advantage, that you know this valley like nobody. I cannot do the story that you can do, not with with the finesse that you can put into. You have the perspectives, you have access to the people, you have access to the community, the local academia, everything. These are your strength. Why not use your strength? So I think you need to take a positive look at approach, and that's why convince yourself that I need to do climate stories, first of all, because this has demand, because this has opportunity, because this is where what the audience wants to hear, and I have the skill and I have the access to the story. I think that, and start you don't have to rush off to the highest peak of the point of the mountain to do that story. Start right from the urban issues, okay? The problem that the valley faces every year, the renewable energy, the need of the renewable energy, the government action or inaction, how much the politics is hogging the limelight, and how much the real issues are being neglected. We can just start by that. Yeah, take small steps. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you so
I
much.
think if there are no other questions,
Yeah,
we can wrap
yeah,
up for now.
yeah.
I saw a question from someone, Ikra, about pitching. Now that's a different skill building issue altogether, Ikra. Maybe in the future, Alia can plan a different one. And yeah, let's be in touch. And maybe we can touch upon that issue
Yeah,
another time. Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you so much, Stella, and everyone for attending this webinar. And Stella, thank you so much for sharing your invaluable insights into women's critical role and as freelancers to report on environmental issues. I mean, your perspectives helped us to ensure that women's perspectives are like front and center, and how they can really contribute to a more equitable and effective response to the climate crisis. So thank you so much. And I hope we, through this platform, we can continue to advocate for gender inclusive reporting and work together towards a sustainable future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alia, so much. It's so great. And yeah, Alia, can I join your collective? I just realized.
Absolutely.
Okay,
It would be a privilege. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'll join in as well. Okay. So thank you for giving me so much time, and hope I enjoyed this conversation, and let's keep this going. Okay.
Yeah. Take care
Yeah.
all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.